If you're in business, you probably have a website, but can your site handle your growth? How many visitors before your site slows down or crashes? What about storage and data security? From web hosting to virtual servers, Pair Networks provides the online infrastructure you need to start, grow, and flourish. When it comes to security and updates, don't worry, we've got you covered. Our 24/7 US-based customer support is the best in the industry. No frustrating chatbots or sitting on hold for hours. Check out pair.com today to learn more. That's PAIR.com.
Attention Talking Simpsons listeners, we have a special mini-series just for you.
We're going through the entire first season of King of the Hill, and you can only hear it if you're a $5 and up patron at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
We're giving the Talking Simpsons treatment to all 13 episodes of King of the Hill's first season, and if you want a free sample, you'll find the first episode available for free in the Talking Simpsons feed. Patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. It's the only place you'll find the first season of Talk King of the Hill.
Made you go click, 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 click. It's real easy, man.
Cartoons from present in the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello everybody and welcome to What a Cartoon, where we destroy the universe to get glop. I'm your host, the smartened up by alien eggheads Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today?
Henry Gilbert, and now let's chip out.
And today's episode is the Captain Simian and the Space Monkeys episode. Yes, we still have no bananas.
Captain Simian and the Space Monkeys.
I already said that, announcer. This episode aired on September 7th, 1996, and yes, this is a patron request, correct, Henry?
Yes, it is, yeah, and that's also one day after my 14th birthday.
Wow, you could have celebrated monkey style.
I was probably sleeping off a cake hangover there. But yes, this was a pick of our premium patron, Devin Hoffarth. Thank you so much again, Devin, for picking another one. If there's ever a $50 and up opening on there, you definitely want to jump on those because you can make us watch cartoons of your choice within reason. Mm-hmm. And I was totally up for doing this one, but Devin says why they picked Captain Simian and the Space Monkeys, quote, I was introduced to this relatively obscure 90s cartoon when I was in high school, and to this day I find it a fascinating bit of media that has disappeared from the collective unconscious. The only problem is I could not find a reputable seller of the series on DVD anywhere, and all uploads seem to be fairly low quality recordings with bad audio, as you can see here. This is a shame to me, as I would love to see this underrated series get more recognition, and hey, perhaps this podcast is just the thing that can do it. I personally feel this cartoon deserves more recognition than Bonkers anyway, as controversial as that opinion may be. I don't know if I put this above Bonkers, but this is a good show.
Yes. Bonkers is our high watermark for animation, but he's right. This is wildly unavailable. In fact, all the clips that you will hear on this show will be of very low quality because they are just YouTube rips of VHS tapes from 1997.
Yeah, just straight off TV, but that's all that exists for complicated business reasons that took a long time for me to parse out, but I think I now understand why this exists nowhere.
And there's very little online about this. Henry had to do a lot of hunting through like LinkedIn accounts and things like that to figure out where people went and what was the fate of Captain Simian.
And who takes credit for what on this and the overseas production. It's very complicated, but I welcome the challenge of this research one, Devin. It made me feel like a real gumshoe reporter on the beat. My personal connection with this is kind of nothing. Like, I didn't watch the show. I was aware of the block of syndicated programming that this show was a member of. Like, I believe on my local WB, this block of programming, BKN, as it was called, aired there, but I never watched it. It was usually viewed by me as like a C-list level animation block. But having seen this now, I think I would have really loved it on my my first day as a 14-year-old.
Ring in your 14th year with Captain Simian. I have a little more experience with this than you, except it's only like I only saw 2 episodes on some random Sunday afternoon. I was like, oh, this is pretty fun. And Jeff Bennett is the orb that floats around. That's kind of neat, but it was never in a regular enough time slot for me. It was not part of a block I was familiar with, like Kids WB or the Fox Kids block. It was a syndicated sort of Disney afternoon style package. Was that the Bohbot Kids Network?
Yes, the Bohbot.
Named after after games journalist Jessica Bohbot.
No, that would be Alan Bohbot.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's so, I mean, the talk about ego there of just like this, we could call this anything. They called it Amazing Adventures for one season. And then after that, they're like, no, it's the Bohbot Kids Network.
He wanted to have a Disney-style trademark, I guess.
Yeah, and, well, we all still talk about Alan Bohbot all the time as the Disney of our generation. But why should I set up this show when Maurice LaMarche can explain it so much better in a quote I have here? So this is from an interview with Maurice LaMarche just about his overall career, where he has a million shows he can talk about. And the person asked that Maurice, amazing voice actor Maurice LaMarche, if you don't know that name, asked him, like, out of your whole career, what do you wish people knew more about? And they said, well, you know, because Pinky and the Brain is so great, but what do you wish people knew more of? And then he said, quote, there was a show in the early 90s called Captain Simian and the Space Monkeys, created by Gordon Bresick, that I just loved. It had the best of the sci-fi world, Michael Dorn, Jerry Doyle, Malcolm McDowell, David Warner performing, and Trek writers like Dorothy D.C. Fontana and Beth Woods contributing scripts. That show should have lasted. It was funny, and it was good sci-fi, and the great characters played by great performers. So
that's great. So at least he remembers it.
Yes, yeah. Seeing what Maurice does in this show, I totally can see why he loved playing the character he plays and remembers it too.
If I had to describe the show up front, I think I would say it is Disney's Gargoyles in space with more humor in the form of sort of 90s era WB style jokes.
Yeah. Which makes it kind of like tonally all over the place, but I like that blend of things because obviously as a nerd, I love Star Trek and that kind of space adventure stuff. I love the voice cast, and which is also very like Gargoyles-y kind of voice cast. And right, it has tons of like referential Tiny Toons, Animaniac style humor in it, suffused all throughout.
Yeah, it's very much influenced by Star Trek, and I think a lot of people forget that Star Trek owned the 90s. Mm-hmm. When George Lucas left the generation down by not making any new Star Wars movies, Star Trek filled the gap. I think there were 3 Star Trek series or 4 Star Trek series in the 90s, maybe 3. Voyager, Deep Space Nine, and Next Generation were all in the 90s. Some of them were overlapping each other.
Enterprise debuted in after the 90s, but that was the 4th. But when this premiered in 96, I believe TNG was just ending, but Deep Space Nine and Voyager were still on the air. So, and also this kind of has, you can see a little of Star Trek, a little of Voyager in here, especially with their want to get home. Plus, they cast multiple folks who had worked on Trek, not on top of like hiring all these writers who worked on Trek, including a lot of women, which really surprised, we talk about a sausage fest in most writers' rooms in the 90s and also now. And yet this show had way more women in the writing credits than I think just about any other kids show had at the time. Why don't we start with the creator of the show, Gordon Bresick? He's from New York City, born in 1952, and in the mid-'80s, he was married to voice actress Ellen Gerstel, who was then working on the show Gem, and she's kind of... based on her IMDb, her most famous role is the dub voice of Mihoshi in the Tenchi Muyo series.
Which one is Mihoshi?
The plain girl?
She has crazy hair, is what we're going to say.
Yeah.
Crazy, colorful hair.
But so Bresick says that his new wife, working in the animation industry in the 80s, he, as a burgeoning writer, was like, I want to give this a shot then, try writing scripts for animated series. And he got his first entree as a freelance writer in the Hanna-Barbera world. First, working on Snorks. He wrote a number of episodes of Snorks and also worked on Scooby and the Smurfs, among many other shows. By the time the early 90s started, he was in on the ground floor of Spielberg's animation era at Warner Brothers. He wrote many episodes from the very beginning of Tiny Toon Adventures, including the one where Hampton has to stand up to Montana Max bullying him, and Buster's Guide to Part-Time Jobs, if you remember that one. He wrote that.
The Citizen Kane parody. The episode-length Citizen Kane parody.
That completely confused me as a child.
I need to go back and rewatch that now that I've seen that movie 5 or 6 times.
Since you know what? I'm going to watch that one again right before we do our What a Cartoon Movie for this month, since we are doing Tiny Toons. I bet I will get a lot of stuff. I haven't watched it probably since I was 12 either. And Gordon would continue working on the Spielberg shows into Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain, though it was more in a freelance capacity, or he wasn't exclusive to it. If you look at his IMDb credits, he was working on a lot of different shows, including the 1993 Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, the worst of the two Sonic the Hedgehog.
Hey, it was a paycheck.
I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying, for listeners who remember two Sonic shows being at the same time, Adventures was the syndicated worst one, while Sonic AM was the ABC Saturday morning one. Let's just resist the urge to do the voice of the chicken robot.
Oh, yeah. There's a law now in the state where we can't do it.
But Gordon worked on that show, and that brought him into the orbit of Bohbot Entertainment. What is Bohbot Entertainment? BKN for short, which I'm just going to call it for the rest of this. It was a company founded as a media buying group in the 80s by one Alan Bohbot, and it was mainly about selling ads on kids shows in the 80s, in the burgeoning toy television boom period. But by the time the early 90s came, with even more kids programming, Bohbot decided it was time to get into the content creation game, partnering with production studios like Deke, New Frontier, and Hallmark to produce and distribute first-run syndicated animated series that they could then make money off of mainly the ad sales on each syndicated station. Like, they'd buy the time and hopefully they'd sell more ads. Also VHS sales and other merchandise when they would partner with toy companies like Mattel.
And syndication still really mattered in the 90s.
Big time.
It was fun to see Hallmark Entertainment after this crazy Space Monkey show. You think of things like greeting cards and Precious Moments figures and things like that. But
it was very surprising to see that title card at the end of it. But yeah, Bohbot, they saw that first-run syndication existed before Disney Afternoon, but I think that really showed what a money bonanza it could be. So lots of companies were getting involved in it, as not just as a single show you'd sell off like Deke would do with Inspector Gadget or Heathcliff, but instead packaged as like a 2 to 3 hour block of shows to be aired in different markets depending on who rented the time out. They first started their block of shows with Amazing Adventures was the name of it, and it of course featured the bad Sonic cartoon, an even worse Double Dragons cartoon. Like Double Dragon, that cartoon is horrendously bad. And also just a lot of other like public domain stuff. I never really watched it other than the Sonic show, because I had to see Sonic, but otherwise it was just like C-list viewing to me.
I saw a lot of these shows outside of the confines of the Bohbots group. They just would air independently. Maybe you could purchase them independently too as a syndicated station.
Yeah. They were also in separate things. Maybe you got a discount if you bought the whole like BKN block of shows. But Sonic was definitely their biggest hit. They produced the most episodes, I think, Adventures of Sonic of anything. And not only that, but they even then, once that show ran its course, they did the awful Christmas special that we did a Retronauts about.
That's right. Sonic Extreme Christmas?
Yes, which was supposed to be about 3D Blast, but was it? Oh, yeah.
It was supposed to be about Sonic Extreme.
Yeah,
sorry, it was Sonic Christmas Blast, because it was going to promote Sonic Extreme, but that game was never made.
But at first, that's...
and it ends with him saying, have an extremely good Christmas.
And then after that ended, then they did Sonic Underground, which had all the Sonic twins with Urkel.
Yeah. Check out our Retronauts about the many voices of Sonic. You'll hear Jaleel White doing 3 voices for that cartoon.
But BKN's kind of breakout hit beyond Sonic, and that Gordon Bresick worked on, was Mighty Max.
That's a great cartoon.
It was really so much better than it deserved to be. Maybe the best of the BKN shows. I guess I can't say that having not watched most of them. But
I watched all of Mighty Max and I was really into it. And I don't know how well it holds up today, but it was surprisingly dark for a kid's show. And one of the main characters dies before the end.
Wow.
Yes. And one of the voices of one of the main characters is Tony J.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It had a really great voice cast, and I love the art style of it too. Like, it had like real sharp edges and burly guys.
And it was an interesting syndicated series in that the final episode, because it was a syndicated series designed to play in a loop forever, the final episode made it so the series looped back to the beginning.
Whoa.
Which left me feeling kind of melancholy, like nothing he did mattered. But I had never seen a syndicated series do that.
We're going to have to do that one next.
It was acknowledging the format, which is really cool.
Yeah. Well, and so, yes, that Gordon worked on that, and that show, I think Mighty Max's success, showed BKN the direction to go in, or where they wanted to go next with another series, because it was tied into a Mattel toy line. It was much more action and boys focused instead of like the soft, goofy edges of Sonic the Hedgehog. Plus, they had the support of Mattel to get it promoted more too, which they wouldn't with some of their other popular series. And so one of the executive producers on Mighty Max was Rob Hudnut, who Hudnut, and he was a former Mattel executive who at the time was, based on his LinkedIn profile, he had helped Mattel in the 80s develop toys that would be on TV shows. And then in the early 90s, he kind of spun off into a separate company that still did that, which tells me there is some like legal loophole to like, well, a Mattel employee technically didn't make this TV show.
I saw that after this, he just did a ton of Barbie things.
Yes,
Just like countless Barbie direct-to-video things.
Yeah, he would, once the laws changed, I guess, he went back to just working at Mattel for 2 decades and helped make all those Barbie DVDs we remember seeing advertised around Christmas time. But yes, Hudnut on his LinkedIn, he takes credit as co-creator of the Mighty Max series and also Captain Simian, which, I bet he did give guidance on how to make these have more toys.
Yeah, it's a very toyetic show in a way that I don't think really interferes with the writing in any way. It just makes the characters more cool. Like they've all got their own ships and their own personalities and techniques and weapons and things like that.
Well, and Hudnut says that Mighty Max even had 300 million in toy sales, which that sounds really high. But I mean, I know I owned a few Mighty Max. It's Polly Pocket for boys. Cool.
It's weird that the cartoon wasn't really that toyetic, to use that word again. It was just like, what if this character went to a bunch of places and had adventures? It's like, yeah, the Skullmaster will be there. You could buy that playset, but it wasn't about selling individual sets to you.
When I was a little kid, I also loved the show because, as we all know, my nickname as a kid was Max.
Yes.
So any show, Fantastic
Even
Max,
Fantastic Max,
Dirty
that diaper
Diapers.
asshole baby.
Yes, yeah. It said it was called Max. I couldn't resist. So by 1996, BKN's original content was in full swing, and as they were looking for another action-y show that would have a Mattel tie-in, Gordon created the show Captain Simian and the Space Monkeys, a parodic space adventure starring monkeys that had more than a little DNA from Star Trek The Next Generation and Babylon 5. Now, Hudnut on his thing calls himself the co-creator, but again, I think
He's a co-creator in the way that Jim Mallon co-created Mystery Science Theater.
Yeah. Well, and also, that's not what the credits say. Sole credit is for Gordon Bressner.
He gets all that Captain Simian money that's coming in.
Well, Hudnut, though, I would believe he probably told them the spaceship should look like this. The spaceship should be called this. These characters should be called this. Like, I would bet he had at least the kind of executive privilege that a toy manufacturer does in those situations. So if that's almost creator credit, then sure. But yeah, Gordon Bressick also said that this Captain Simian and his work on Pinky and the Brain is the work he's most proud of in his whole career.
Okay.
Like this might be me insinuating things, but in the interview with him I read too, I think he did not like working with some executives on this show.
Yeah.
And so, yes, Mattel would make a line of toys, and they would do every major character. Even Shaolin the girl got her own toy in the waves of action figures.
I'm looking at these toys now on eBay, and they're very cool. And I'll tell you what, there's never been a better time to buy Captain Simian merchandise. In fact, there are cells you could buy for $10 online.
Those are some incredibly affordable cells.
You know what? Just buy all the cells and animate the show yourself. We'll have better versions that way.
One of those cells might be the art I use on this episode just to get some HD content for it. Yeah, those toys, they're neat toys. They definitely come from the time. They come from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles school of thought of funny animal plus He-Man equals action toys. Like, so it's all weird animal stuff, but it's monkeys instead of turtles. Well, how can you go wrong? You're going to make tons of money. And yes, the production company, though, behind it working with BKN, because Bohbot rarely did all the work on the show, or they worked with a ton of different partners, and Hallmark was their partner on this. Hallmark at the time owned He-Man and Fat Albert too.
Really? So, okay.
Well, I say that based on also on eBay, one of the earliest pictures I found promoting this was from a 1995 trade ad for Hallmark of like, Hallmark, we got some cool stuff coming. And there's a very pre-production drawing of Captain Simian in the center surrounded by like Fat Albert and He-Man. It was very strange.
What a crossover.
And BKN then commissioned 26 episodes of the show.
That's a lot.
With many episodes written by Trek and Babylon 5 alums, like the previously mentioned DC and Woods. Also Nick Sagan and Christy Marks, who also is the creator of Gem and the Hologram.
That's right, yeah.
She wrote the episode Felonious Monk.
Yes, this series is full of monkey puns.
So many puns.
And I was telling Henry before that I think they ended with 26 because they were out of monkey puns. They're like, that's it. We did them all.
We did.
We have nowhere to go from here.
Well, they still have brain puns, too.
Yeah, yeah, they're true. Monkey puns and brain puns.
You know, man, I wonder if they did that monkey brains jokes, if they were inspired by Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Ooh, maybe. That could be the DNA for all of this.
And the voice talent was a deep roster. Like, this was not... It did have a couple of the guys you hear voiced on everything, but they also had the late Jerry Doyle, who was the top cop on Babylon 5. That was his most famous character.
Being a little Shatnery on this.
Oh, very Shatnery. Yeah. I took him as playing Simian like Joe Friday meets Captain Kirk.
Yeah, he's not a full-on Shatner impression, but some of his line readings do have the Shatner pauses in them.
Yeah, well, it's like Captain Kirk when he's quiet or he's like low energy Kirk, that's really Simian, but Simian never gets to the highs of like, what are you doing? Like, he never does that. He mainly sticks to like the Joe Friday. Well, that's nice. And then we have Karen Murayama as Shaolin, the Chinese golden monkey. We've got funny man Dom Herrera as Spidor.
That's right. My main man, sister, my man.
He even says Manon.
Yeah, he loved Dr. Katz. That's where I got to know Dom Herrera.
I loved him on Dr. Katz too.
Yeah.
Like, is my nose bulbous to you? What is this? What is this protrusion on my leg here? Like, that's your penis, Dom. And it's like, it's not like gay. It's not like gay. I'm saying that. Anyway, Maurice LaMarche as Splits, or Dr. Splits / Splitsy, the split personality ape Dr. Man. And then we have James Avery, Uncle Phil himself as Gore Illa, the gentle giant. Plus, sci-fi superstars playing the villains like Michael Dorn, Worf as Nebula, Malcolm McDowell of Clockwork Orange and Wing Commander fame.
And Michael Dorn was Xanatos, right?
No, that was Jonathan Frakes. He was Cold Stone.
Okay, that's right. The owner of the creamery that they fought in.
And also David Warner was the voice
I love
on there
him.
too. His voice is perfect in everything. Though Trek fans would know him best as the Cardassian who tortures Patrick Stewart and makes him see 5 lights.
I like him as the Lobe.
Oh, yes. I mean, he's killing it as the Lobe right as he's recording for Captain Simian as well. And I think, Bresic brought a lot of what he learned from the Warner shows he worked on to this series. Like, this really feels like a Warner series. After the success of all the Warner shows like Batman and Tiny Toons, people were just getting purchased off from that to do more of those shows. That's how Gargoyles came to be as well. After the first 52 of Batman were done, Disney was like, we want some Batman. Let's hire as many of these people as we can.
I thought it was pretty interesting that they actually got an Asian actress to play the Asian monkey on
That
the
shocked
show.
me, honestly.
Although a little bit of the Orientalism is odd, and there's like, they might as well just ring a gong when she starts talking.
Yeah.
And I don't think Buddhists worship monkeys. I could be wrong about this.
Who knows with those crazy Buddhists?
They're all up on those mountains. Who knows what's going on up there? But that was a nice touch for a 90s show. Mm-hmm. And she does not have a weird accent that is not authentic. It's like she just talks like there's no accent on her, right?
In
terms of
really,
by no accent, I mean American.
Yeah, I mean it's played more as like a regal, fancy American.
Yeah, that was a good choice.
Yeah, it has like the humor of Animaniacs, but with a harder edge action show in the mold of Batman. But I think that mixed tone made it hard to market for BKN as a top product for them. And on the art side of things, you can see a lot of those mixed resumes in the production team of it too. So art direction was led by Joe Pearson, who his biggest credits at the time were for Rocco, DuckTales, and Tiny Toons.
Okay, yeah.
And we got character designs by Greg Davidson, who was a storyboarder on Transformers and Batman the Animated Series, as well as Frank Coombs, who was a designer on lesser known things like Mummies Alive, which was a bigger hit for BKN after Simian.
I did watch a bit of Mummies Alive.
And also the Gen 13 movie, which we did not get in America because it was too hot for TV.
Too hot. God, that Gen 13 burned brightly from 1994 to 1997 probably.
I've always wanted to watch it. I've only seen a couple scenes from it. It's directed by Kevin Altieri. Like, they hired a big name for it, though it didn't have big money behind it.
Only later would I learn that manga is way hornier than Gen 13 ever could be.
Yeah, you were like, I was wasting all this time on Gen 13.
This redhead only loses her clothes on every other page. What am I doing?
Brad Coombs also worked on Pearl Jam's Do the Evolution video, if you remember that wild and wacky animated music video. Do the Evolution.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yep, I do.
And the U.S. side of production was handled from the L.A. studio Toon Us In Animation, which was headed up by Andy Kim, who most famously to us would be a layout artist on the games era of Ren and Stimpy, as well as season 4 of The Simpsons. He worked on several episodes as layout artist, and also on Batman the Animated Series. And the overseas production was handled mainly by Sun Min Studios, which has worked on an incredibly large amount of shows. For previous What a Cartoon shows, they did production on Gargoyles episodes and The Max, as well as Steven Universe and OKKO. They're still at it to this day at Sunmint.
This is a very good-looking show. I was kind of surprised.
It comes through, even on these VHS transfers, it still looks really good.
You have to fight your way through the fog to see how good it looks, but it looks pretty good.
Compared to, say, Adventures of Sonic, it's a really pretty show. Though sometimes it gets a little more ambitious than I think their animation budget can take. And the lesser sometimes the animation goes a little more down because Sun Min also worked with G-Ray, which was a lesser known operation out of South Korea that also worked on BKN shows like RoboCop Alpha Commandos, which I had never heard of before. It's like people say it's worse than the other RoboCop show when we were kids.
Oh boy.
And also the show Mega Babies, whatever that is.
Mega Babies?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take your word for it. Mega Babies.
The ratings for the Captain Simian were hard to gauge because it was broadcast in syndication, but given its single season and there was only one wave of toys, I don't think it was the Ninja Turtles level success that BKN hoped Captain Simian would be.
Yeah, how many of these syndicated shows even lasted more than one package worth of episodes, really?
You know, it was Sonic of the BKN one. Sonic got more than one. Mighty Max got more than one. There might be a few others, but it's
pretty rare. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because once you got 26, you can just run that endlessly. You know, who cares? It's just for dumb kids. Like, run them forever. Yes, the next year, Extreme Ghostbusters replaced it in the lineup, which that was BKN. A lot of their deals definitely were for, can we get this once popular thing cheaper than it would have been before? Also, one of their first shows was like Thunderbirds in the 90s. Which, who even in 1991, you're like, Thunderbirds? That's for my grandpa.
I'm not watching that.
And Extreme Ghostbusters was known for having the cool Ghostbusters working with the original Ghostbusters. And
just Egon, right?
Just Egon, yeah. But design-wise, it got kind of similar to real Ghostbusters, though not half as anime as it was. And Gordon, after that, works sporadically as a freelance animation writer on a lot of shows, but his main field today seems to be working on horror films, like low-budget horror movies, where he, I think, has a lot more artistic control than he does on animated series.
It seemed like he probably was very spoiled by working at Warner.
Oh, yeah, I bet so.
In terms of getting away with stuff and having more creative control of projects.
Yeah, I mean, when you go from Pinky and the Brain, where you have Steven Spielberg probably insulating you from a lot of that stuff, to then working for seemingly a more cutthroat and toy-run business like BKN at the time, I would bet things feel a bit different.
I feel like there would have been a more specific 70s reference in this episode than a disco ball. If this was a Pinky and the Brain thing. It would have been like Neil Sedaka or whatever.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, though when you think of those kind of constraints that Bresic and his team had on it, it's actually more impressive that they pulled off a show of this quality with all those different masters demanding it to be worse. And yes, Hudnut returned to Mattel, as we said, and he worked on producing lots of more cartoons that were just toy commercials writ large, like completely mask off, not even pretending to be shows anymore. And meanwhile, from then on, BKN only increased its heavy investment into original programming. Apparently, one of their holdings was Montgomery Ward, and they shut it down to focus on this instead. So you can blame BKN Animation for Montgomery Ward not being around
There was
anymore.
a corpse of a Montgomery Ward where I went to grad school, just a big empty department store. Just nothing in it.
My Montgomery Wards got pretty quickly replaced with a Whole Foods, I think. But the one that was right next to Target, which it's like, what do you need a Montgomery Wards when Target's right there? But anyway, yes, the BKM programming block still kept going for a few years. They were working more on shows like Zorro and other action bits, but the BKN block was killed partially thanks to a couple lawsuits really breaking bad for BKN.
God.
One was they were sued by Sinclair Broadcasting because Sinclair on their stations said that BKN came up short on ad sales and owed them money. Then meanwhile, they did a show called like AJ the Time Travel Kid, and they got sued by a writer who said it was provably ripped off from her books.
Oh, really?
So they lost $14 million there too. Yeah. And so it left terrestrial TV, but Bohbot would not be defeated. He looked to more international deals, and he did a lot more programming in Europe and India to distribute shows like Zorro, Generation Z. Though at some point, Alan Bohbot left the company, but then started a new BKN at the same time, and then bought back his company, and now changed that company to 41E, which operates out of Spain, which sounds like a tax dodge to me.
It sounds like a scheme.
There's a lot of, all of this trading of spots and names and places, it feels like a lot of tax dodging and lawsuits.
So he formed a new company to buy his old company, and then he moved those to Spain, where he formed another new company.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my read on it.
That's business, folks.
It's very complicated. And so, and 41E purchased the BKN library of shows. So if you want to know where Captain Simian is, it's collecting dust in a warehouse there.
Where's the 41E streaming network? There could be 80 syndicated cartoons.
Well, I think, thanks to all these production partnerships, it probably leads to a lot of red tape of does BKN own all of Captain Simian? Does it share the ownership with Mattel and Hallmark? Who actually has it? Who'd make money off the DVDs? And then even if they were to put out DVDs, who would buy them? Who would they count on to even buy 1,000 of them? There's kind of no market for it. But 41E's big boom back onto animation was the 2011 Pac-Man CGI series, if you remember that.
Oh, yeah. I once got a toy from that when I was working at 1UP. It just showed up on a desk one day.
Quick aside about that Pac-Man CGI series. I was at the Namco Bandai building in Tokyo, and they were showing us the game based on this. And the Japanese game makers were bragging about all the people they were working with on this TV show, which I knew was just it's a shitty CGI show. Who cares? Though it did have Tom Ruger and Paul Rugg working on it, so maybe it's not that bad. But the guy said, the Japanese producer said, we're working with the creator of Spider-Man. And I was like, you mean Avi Arad? And Avi Arad, the producer on Spider-Man movies, told you I'm the creator of Spider-Man, and they just were like, well, I guess he is.
We'll do anything you say, sir.
That really pissed me off. My friend, my coworker and colleague who was in the meeting with me looked directly at me in the face when he said creator Spider-Man, and I just shook my head like, I know.
Were you wearing a Spider-Man t-shirt? There's
probably.
a 50-50 chance Henry was wearing a Spider-Man t-shirt.
I owned more Mario t-shirts.
Now he's wearing a Garfield t-shirt, by the way.
Actually, I might have been wearing a Pac-Man t-shirt that day. Who's to say? But anyway, yes, that Pac-Man CGI show was actually the height of their productions. Everything gets way cheaper after that. They only had one other licensed show at 41E based on the Skylanders show, but they got the Skylanders rights as Skylanders was becoming way less popular.
All those Toys to Life thing were falling off a cliff.
And the rest of 41E, they also have, they do have a monkey show. One of those shows, how King Kong, the Donkey Kong lawsuit from Nintendo, proved that Universal doesn't have the rights to Kong. So you'll see a million things called Kong, the Ape Man or whatever, all these bootleg things. They've done multiple Kong shows that are just it's our Kong. You can't tell the difference.
So the world owns Kong? Is that true?
Yeah,
okay.
We could make Kong the show right now.
Is that why Godzilla will be fighting him next year?
Well, King Kong is it gets a little more complicated, but you can do a giant monkey show called Kong, and you'd be perfectly legally safe. But also, I did want to mention the 41E's other shows are the things that sometimes, if you'll see them in your Netflix searches, you're like, who makes this shit and who watches this? Like shows like Super Monsters and Monster Pets, like these just CGI nothing. It's just like, what even is this?
I feel like those are just babysitters. You just leave them on and you leave the room as your child just stares off into the void.
It's pink and colorful, who knows? But though one guy who worked on it is like this conservative name Rick Unger, which is very confusing to me. He worked at Marvel in the bad years of Marvel, like the bankruptcy years of Marvel. And he has been like this producer on a bunch of shows. He co-created Biker Mice from Mars, works at 41E, and also on Sirius XM hosts a radio show with the bald African-American man who was the head of the RNC in Obama's first term.
Oh, I vaguely... What's his name again?
Yes, Michael Steele. Jon Stewart called him. He was the guy who always found the fly in his soup in the Grover sketches. So. But that takes us far, far away from Captain Simian. But that's where 41E, the owners of Captain Simian, are. And, the legacy of this show would largely be forgotten if it wasn't for just the bootleg videos on YouTube out there. Like, nobody owns the toys. Nobody has re-released it.
And I feel like we're going to be one of the top hits on SEO for this once people start... if people start Googling this again, we'll be number 2 under the Wikipedia entry. There is a fan page for it, but it's a fan page that looks like it was last updated in maybe 2002. So it's maybe a little bit out of date.
I think so. Yeah. Well, I mean, in 2002, it's only like 6 years old. It still feels fresh enough that you can see it on TV. Now it's 23 years old, or will be in September, which makes me feel very aged. But yeah, I think the show did have, the animation was better than average for the kind of budget it got, and it had a really committed writing staff and voice actors. Like it's a quality show. Like, is it on the A level of Batman the Animated Series or Animaniacs? No, it didn't have that kind of money or time.
A few shows did.
Yeah, very few did. And also going back to watch it, like, it's full of fun parodies of, like, not just Star Trek, but also there's a full Aliens episode. There's like a Beavis and Butthead joke in some episodes. It gets very inside too. I like that about it. Plus, there's tons of great jokes about like red shirts and body snatchers and time paradoxes.
It's very pop culture aware. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like Futurama, but with monkeys.
Yeah, but that's where Captain Simian is today, and I hope all 26 episodes are on YouTube if you guys want to give it a watch, or you could just watch the second episode, part 2 of the hour-long premiere, which we're just skipping to. We're skipping episode 1, going straight to part 2 because episode 1 just wastes a lot of time on setup, and we want to get straight to there. So when we come back, we're going to be talking about, yes, we still have no bananas.
BKN will be right back.
Now, coming up first today, we'll take a journey halfway across the galaxy and then turn left in 30 light seconds.
Frozen and thrown to the deepest regions of space, NASA's first chimp is brought back to life and given superior intelligence. Together with his elite team of warriors, they battle against the evil Nebula and his deadly creature, Rhesus. Prepare to meet Captain Simian and the Space Monkeys, a brand new series coming soon to CITV.
Let's peel off into this ad break. It's your favorite Simian, Henry Gilbert here.
Hey, it's Bob Mackey, and I say, God Schmott, I want my monkey man.
And welcome to the break for this week's episode. Thanks again to our premium patron, Devin, for picking this one and making us do it. And you could be a patron too, maybe not premium if the space isn't open, but you'll feel like a premium experience even at the $5 level for all the cool stuff you'll get for all our cool podcasts on the Talking Simpsons Network.
That's right. If you sign up at the $5 level, you'll have access to all of the podcasts behind that paywall that we've been doing for the past 2 years. Limited series like Talking Critic, Talking Futurama, Talk King of the Hill, and our newest limited series coming to you this summer at the end of August. So that'll be starting up, and only patrons at the $5 level will have access to that. At the $5 level, we also have things like tons of interviews, almost 20 interviews with animation legendaries, mostly from The Simpsons. We have end-of-season wrap-ups, deleted scene specials, a monthly community podcast, and so much more. If you love our voices and our podcast, you're missing out on so much by not being a patron right now. And Henry, for our big spenders, what is going on at the $10 level on patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons?
Well, for the last half of the year, we've been doing our What a Cartoon Movie Podcast, where we take the concept of What a Cartoon, but instead of a television series, we do an animated feature film each month. And in the past, we've done some killer things like Batman Mask of the Phantasm, Kiki's Delivery Service, Akira, a Goofy movie, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, The Secret of Nim, Aladdin, the 1992 one, and coming up this month in June, Tiny Toons, How I Spent My Vacation, which, if you, we talked a bit about Tiny Toons in this episode because Gordon Bressick worked on it. We're going to go deep, not only into the Spielberg-run animated series that was a rebirth of Warner Animation, but also into the anime stylings of this truly gorgeous OVA of an animated feature. And you can only hear what will certainly be a long podcast and very informative too. If you're a $10 and up patron, you'll get every new one that comes once a month, and all of our previous ones will be available to you. Totally worth it at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
That's it for this ad break. We're going to hang out here, and you can swing right into our discussion of Captain Simian and the Space Monkeys.
And now back to our show.
Captain Simian and the Space Monkeys.
All right, we are back with Captain Simian and the Space Monkeys, the second episode, though it aired as a 1 hour block in its premiere. The parts 1 and 2 both aired on September 7th.
So we could talk about the intro sequence a bit if you want to. I like how it starts off with the solemn Star Trek synth trumpets, like and then it goes into a bunch of action scenes with all the characters. Slapsticky action scenes.
Yeah, and they it's not fully original, but it's like there is at least some original animation in there with clip packages, which I do like that. But they really think they're very clever with, it's the Star Trek opening, and out to reveal the captain, a monkey, man.
Yeah.
What?
The first thing you see is a ship going across the sky to the kind of Star Trek-y sounds, and then you see the monkey.
Yeah, it's Captain Simian himself right there, and also just like great original stuff in there of the monk, like Captain Simian fighting the brain on his face, and also we get to see clips of the Hollow Boons who are not in here, so I'll talk about them now. It was their very clever creation for red shirts in the show, which, if you don't know that very basic Star Trek knowledge, red shirts are the names of the nobody crew members who on Star Trek get killed off to prove that something is a threat, because obviously you can't kill Scotty, but if you just meet an ensign for the first time at the start of an episode and they explode, then you know things are serious.
Well, one smart move they make in this series is that everything is a robot, so kill them all.
Well, and so the Holoboons, though, they're hard light holograms, even though they all act with specific personalities and autonomy. They're like, no, they're holograms. It's fine. They're going to die all the time. And that's like in the opening, the joke is that Gorilla accidentally shoots 3 of them out of the airlock. And he's just like, oh, whoops.
I think one influence we didn't really note is Planet of the Apes.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely,
you know what?
in terms of all the designs. Like, I listened to the Dana Gould podcast a ton, and everything in this show is everything he loves. Like, everybody who grew up in that era loves Star Trek and Planet of the Apes and all of this stuff, and 70s references.
Yeah, I bet he was, I would bet he would be friends with somebody who worked on the show in his circle of people, I would bet. One more animation side person I should have mentioned before, the director of this episode and about half the episodes total, Bradley Rader, who he directed most of the major episodes, like the first 2 and the last 3, which were a big big 3-parter. He did the direction on that. His biggest credits were he was a director on Spawn, the HBO Spawn series.
He won an Emmy for that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And that series went forgotten.
Maybe it'll start coming back into the consciousness when the new Spawn movie comes out. Also, he worked on Batman the Animated Series, Captain Planet, which we also did, and most recently was a storyboarder on Bob's Burgers.
I saw he did some King of the Hill, too.
Oh, okay. That got him into the Dotriva-verse.
Yeah, that's true. I think his background is a comic book artist.
That fits.
Storyboard artist is kind of in the same wheelhouse there.
I mean, that really fits with working on Captain Planet and the other action shows, too, that he did. And so we come into the episode, and I'm honestly glad we skipped episode 1. Behind the scenes info here, listeners, we originally planned on doing episode 1, and then when I was watching episode 2 this morning, I told Bob, I think the episode 2 is way better, and the episode 1 is just too much pre-story.
Yeah, basically episode 1 is the Wikipedia synopsis of the characters.
Yeah, you see how useless episode 1 is when you just get the previously on story from Simian at the start of this, but it takes its time. Just a brief description, episode 1. It starts with a very clever reveal of a guy in his basically fighter jet and then crashing, and then it's revealed that the guy in this X-Wing alike, he takes off his helmet and it's an ape man. What? And then he starts telling you his story almost in a kind of double indemnity kind of voiceover thing. So this episode 2 takes place partially during his flashback, and in there he explains that he is one of the original chimps NASA sent off into space, that he somehow fell into a wormhole and was discovered by these godlike beings called 4 spacebar presses, basically. They are just silence.
That might confuse you if you're watching this show and thinking, what, did they edit the dialogue out? Did he just swear?
Yes.
It's So there you go.
Yes. And he is then granted human intelligence, or even beyond human, though he does throw poop at one point. And then this 3-headed space being just tells him, you have to protect the universe, and we're dying, and here's your spaceship, and it's just the total Deus Ex Machina of just we're the magic thing, here's all your stuff. Go have space adventures for the rest of the series. And then they summoned 4 other apes to hang out with him, and it's really just about seeing them on the planet Earth. You get to see Spydor as basically a dancing monkey for a old organ grinder. You get to see Gorilla beating up poachers who are trying to kill his brother. You get to see that Shaolin is a worshipped monkey at a Buddhist monastery, which doesn't seem very real.
Not very faithful.
And we get to see that Splits is already has a split personality, but lives in a zoo and doesn't like being made fun of by these mean kids. They're all given intelligence, though the machine breaks as it's giving Gorilla intelligence, so he's less intelligent. Mm-hmm. And then they get attacked by Nebula and Rhesus too, because the previous Rhesus was already destroyed, some would say in pieces.
Oh, there's an episode called that.
Of course there is. Yeah. Of course there is. And so they are now finally together as a group, but being attacked.
Houston, this is Captain Simian, continuing status report. I may be a NASA-trained chimp who was the victim of a freak accident, was smartened up by a bunch of alien eggheads, and commands a spaceship with a crew of highly trained primates. But even I wasn't ready for what happened next. Space monkeys, flip out!
So Space Monkeys flip out.
That's his Transformers rollout.
Yeah, there's a bunch of monkey expressions in this series.
Well, you need to have something written on the back of your toy box.
True.
Something has to go on there.
Or if there ever was a commercial for these toys, you'll flip out over Captain Simian's new line of toys.
Though it's also flip out and peel out. It's
flip out, peel out, and chimp out.
Yeah, chimp out. It's just a lot of. Monkeys do flip, sure.
Yeah.
And so yes, they're being attacked by the very Starscream-like Rhesus 2, in that he's the second in command to the big bad, but he's usually scheming behind the scenes. Voiced by Malcolm McDowell of Clockwork Orange fame. Here, let's sample his voice as he threatens the group.
Permit me to introduce Rhesus 2, Nebula's creation.
Well. You're all very agile. For fleshopods.
Nobody calls me a fleshopod. Nobody ever. What's a fleshopod?
Intelligent apes. You must have very interesting brains.
Rhesus, we're all monkeys here. There's no reason for us to fight.
Since we are, as you say, related, I shall be merciful. Give me the anti-force, and I'll only destroy your bodies. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Nice. So all the brain puns come from Rhesus.
Every single one. They really do hit. Rhesus is a recurring villain in the show, so they've got more in the chamber.
So
Don't worry.
Just like a monkey robot that has 2 pistols that are powered by green brains. And
I love that.
He can take out his brain and throw it at people, and the brain can crawl back into his robot suit. Sort of like a Krang-style villain.
Yeah. I mean, kids love squishy brains, so you get a squishy brain toy.
It's a nice kind of like gross-out villain. And I was just thinking, like, boy, human beings have a lot of monkey jokes and puns. I think we're just obsessed with monkeys because we're obsessed with ourselves. It's like, that looks like me, and that's funny.
Yes, yeah.
I'm interested in that.
This thing that kind of looks like me is wearing funny pants. Or he can be a detective or whatever.
Apes a poppin'.
Now monkeys are less funny now. Or I feel
now that we know how capable of murder they are.
Yeah, it's not as cute. Not as cute.
Listen to our girly edition podcast. Talking Simpsons.
But I like the design on Rhesus too. The like his brain guns, his cyborg Frankenstein kind of design. Like he has mismatched arms and legs.
These are all very cool designs. They remind me a bit of the Tick.
Yeah,
they're cool, but they're also funny.
You know, in other action shows, they wouldn't get as much comedy out of the main character like they do with Simian, but he has tons of funny things to say. Like, most of the time, whenever he's talking into what would be your Star Trek pin, he's always talking into his armpit.
Yeah, I like how a lot of the humor on this show, the characters don't really comment on it. Just like they live in this kind of wacky world.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, well, and also, like, you have Orbitron, Jeff Bennett, floating around just being a snide British person. Like,
yes, and Jeff Bennett played Dexter's dad, of course, and also played Johnny Bravo.
He's a million voices, but those he deserves an Emmy for just Dexter's dad. That voice is so funny.
I mean, his career was exploding at this point in history.
And yeah, they also really lean on Dom Irera to have a lot of the biggest jokes. And just like, are you kidding me? Like, he has so many "are you kidding me" one-liners, and also just used as a guy to explain things to him. That's really Spydor's reason to exist. Though he also is rogue of the group in that he's usually stealing stuff.
Okay.
Also,
so they're like an RPG party.
Yeah, pretty much. Though he also is like kind of ripping off the team, where it's like, can we trust this guy? There's little moments like that. Though I think his Italian sayings are because he was trained by old-timey organ grinder Italian. So
I guess they were still around in 1996.
Sure. Yeah, you'd find them all over Central Park. So we have a little fight between Rhesus 2 and with his brain bots. He has a collection of brains that he then puts in robots that fight for him. There's putties, I guess you'd say. And then there's just some fun Simian animation there. Like I really like in a lot of their fights, they remember often they can use their feet like hands. So they'll have like 4 lasers and just shooting from all angles there.
And there's a fun Star Trek joke in that all of their guns are set to stun. Is that a sort of network standards joke?
Yeah, I think so.
I got a chuckle out of that.
That's why I gave it to them. It's more like they were given it by the executive.
Yeah, they don't want us to use lethal force is what Captain Simian says.
Yeah, which also follows one of the many long-running jokes in the show. Whenever their overlords are mentioned with silence, another person would say, "The who?"
Yeah.
And then we also get to meet good old Splitsy.
Sorry about that. I detest violence.
Put a down ballerina.
Okay, big guy, get him! Show him how a gorilla fights. What's my name?
Gorillas do not fight.
Ow! Hey, he's killing me!
So I like the Dr. Splits/Splitsy character because Gordon Bressick worked on Pinky and the Brain. This is a character that is both Pinky and the Brain together.
Yeah, that was my immediate thought.
Yeah. It was also, this character serves the same purpose as a lot of sci-fi characters and sci-fi stuff where a scientist will give a complicated explanation of something and then someone will say, "In English, Doc?"
Yes. Yeah.
So the other hillbilly guy kind of translates. And by the way, this is a monkey. When you hear the boing sound, he turns from a very effete intellectual to the bumpkin character.
Yeah, and mainly just his hair changes in design.
Yeah.
He changes,
I could have done without the sound effect, honestly.
Yeah,
I think it's a little too much.
I think it's that they're afraid kids won't get it. They're like, well, why did he stop? So sproing, and obviously they are mocking a mental illness of a split personality disorder, but hey, it's fun. It's a sci-fi one.
And I think it was never as it was depicted in fiction.
No.
That sort of personality disorder.
Well, as M. Night Shyamalan told me, it gives you superpowers having split personality. But I thought the same thing. It's Pinky and the Brain in the same body, except instead of Orson Welles, it's Vincent Price.
Oh, you're right.
Voice.
And it is Maurice LaMarche doing both voices.
Yes, yeah. And I just love the idea of Vincent Price constantly having conversations with a hick. Like he's like, oh, really? Like
I've heard that hick voice on The Critic.
Yes, yeah.
Tim Janowitz.
Well, I think Bresic too, and the other producers, like, if you work with Maurice LaMarche enough, you hear him talk to himself all the time. That why wouldn't you write a character for him that just is that? And I think that's why Maurice seems to have a ton of fun with Splitsy, and I think that's why he remembers this so well, because like this character is just a lot of fun for him to be. Mm-hmm. And they even do like deeper episodes with him. There's an episode where he becomes two people. The split personalities are their own separate being, and then they realize that they need the other to coexist, and it's hard to live without the other.
I think it's hard to tell from the lower quality clip that we have, but Gore is a pacifist, I guess, until one of his friends is hurt or in danger.
Yeah,
and his eyes glow red. He starts going berserker mode on stuff.
Yeah, James Avery plays him pretty much like Lenny from Mice and Men.
Yeah, I like James Avery, but I like him as, loud theatrical characters like Uncle Phil and Shredder and people like that. He's a little low-key because that's the character. I don't think he's wasted exactly, but I like hearing him with more like force behind his portrayals.
Yeah, I felt he's kind of overqualified for Gorilla, and also I'm certain this was not their intention, but having their only African American actor in the group be the dumb one, I don't know. I feel, and a gorilla, it's just like
there's a little bit of racial baggage there. That was unintentional, of course, but that's as a guilty white leftist. That was the first thing I thought of. Why'd they cast?
But James Avery was always great. R.I.P. buddy. But yeah, he does seem overqualified for this, even though in some episodes, Gorilla is given more to do, but that stretches his skills a bit more. Usually he's just playing the simple, gentle giant. But I like Dom's reactions to him. Like, they're a fun pair together. Like, come on, buddy, do your thing. And I think, too, with it, so we get to see the rest of the action there, and we even get to see Shaolin show how good she is.
Maroon, this is one gorilla you don't want to undertake.
One more move from any of you, and this female will be extinguished.
You don't know her very well, do he?
Huh?
That was A-OK, Shaolin. Glad to see you part of the team.
That thing was being disrespectful. We are not part of any team.
Stupid monkeys. Once Lord Nebula gets the Anti-Force, he will destroy this entire planet. Then I'll pick through the rubble, and I will have your brains.
I will have your brains. So
why does he want their brains?
Well, I mean,
Who
you can
wouldn't
put him
want
in
monkey brains.
The more brains he has, the more robots he can control with his collection of brains.
And we had also Spider quoting Bugs Bunny, who was quoting some radio guy from the 30s, I'm guessing.
That's right, yeah.
You don't know me very well, do he?
Dom's fun that way. He should have done more cartoon. Not that he didn't do a lot. He did do some, but he should have been in more stuff like this. Even though he is one of those one voice hires, he's not doing a bunch of voices.
You know what you want out of him.
Yeah, I mean, you hire Jeff Bennett and Maurice to do 17 voices, and you just get Dom to say Maron. The character of Shaolin shows that by mid-90s, producers were definitely aware of the Smurfette criticisms of that a kid's cartoon is sexist in that they only have one girl on the show and she is usually captured. Obviously, they're not going to make more than one girl because you got to sell toys and boys don't buy girl toys. But at the very least, though, their answer was to make arguably the best fighter on the team be a girl. So they, at least of the single girl they have, she's a badass mother.
And they predicted all of the white Star Trek nerds watching would be into Asian girls.
Yes, yeah, they were on
Asian
the cutting
monkeys.
edge of that. Yeah. Oh dear. Yeah. No, there's a few episodes alike. Not that I think Captain Simian's handsome in his own right, but they definitely enjoyed drawing some boobs on monkey girls in some episodes.
I think this show was able to persist in on the internet because of the furry community, and we love them. They're great.
Yeah. No, also Shaolin they give her the arc of her elitism just for this episode, really. Like she's in other episodes, she's just kind of wise and also full of sexual tension with Simian, because of course no woman can be on board of a ship without falling in love with some man. But she isn't elitist anymore, which they have an answer for that later. But I do like her still referring to herself as we, because she has been worshipped as a god up to this point in her life. Also, cool little animation moment when Rhesus says destroy the entire planet. He kind of crushes his hands together in an emotion to let people know it was crushing the planet. There's also a funny line too where Jeff Bennett-bot, Orbitron, tells them they got to get on their ship before everything blows up. And there's a really cute moment of Simian smiling after talking to Shaolin, and then it kind of like wipes to him in the same position, but aghast at what the ship looks like.
It's made for humans, not monkeys.
Yes, yeah. It's a funny shot. I like that shot. And I like seeing the inside of the ship and its human design too, because it makes it all the better when you see what a monkey inside would look like instead. By the second episode, can you believe it? They have a Clockwork Orange reference already with Malcolm.
Is that the I'm singing in my brain?
I'm singing in my brain.
I forgot that was a Clockwork Orange reference. You're totally right.
It only hit me on second watch.
I wrote it down because it was so stupid that I loved it.
That's why it makes more sense now that you've seen Clockwork Orange. He sings that before a very horrible scene in the movie. But everybody just remembers how cool his character was in Clockwork Orange. Not that he is an amoral monster. He's just a cool guy to wear on t-shirts. Everybody's favorite character. And yes, as they try to activate the ship, they then back out. This Galaxy Quest kind of stole this joke in their version of this.
Oh, you're right, yeah.
Not that I don't love Galaxy Quest in its own right. I'm not calling it a ripoff, but that's also then as they're flying out and hitting hyperspace, that's when Simian says, now let's chimp out. Also, by the second episode, they do their first HAL reference with Orbitron as well. They're hitting all the hits here of Kubrick. Actually, it's back-to-back Kubrick references. That happens because as they're being attacked on their ship and don't know how to defend themselves, Simian asks Orbitron for help, and Orbitron is a bit snippy in this next clip.
Where are the shields? We're getting killed out here.
Of course, I could tell you how to defeat Rhesus, if you ask politely.
Get me that Orbitron. Oh, he broke it.
Perhaps I can rearrange some of the circuits. What do you all know about this kind of doohickey? Let me try. I know more than you do about these things, you monkey wrench.
I don't care which one of you fixes it. I want it functional ASAP.
I think that Maurice LaMarche, so the brain is part Orson Welles, a little bit of Vincent Price. I think this is a lot of Vincent Price with a little bit of Jonathan Harris from Lost in Space. Oh, yeah. The pain, oh, the pain.
He did like you pusillanimous pile of cogs and camshifts.
Yeah.
He has a bit of that to him, except he's yelling at himself. I just love hearing him say doohickey. That's funny too. You can still make fun of white trash people. That's also, I should have warned listeners before this, if you're going to watch the episode, this is a Pokemon shock ass episode. There's some real strobe effects, but especially when Spydor reacts to the Orbitron being crushed, it is the exact Pokemon shock thing of red and blue lights flashing behind him in quick succession.
Yeah, it was, it hurt me. It hurt me a little bit.
Yeah, it's found out that I won't react with a seizure, but I don't love it either. So keep an eye out for that, viewers. Maybe that's why I can't come back, like legally.
It's secretly killed. There was actually a Captain Simian shock that was underreported. it.
Nobody watched it, so it only killed one child. No, I kid. But yeah, they're dysfunctional as a crew right now. Like they're crushing their Orbitron. They can't get the shields up. Nothing's working as they're being attacked in this big space fight. Though Shaolin learns to listen to orders a little bit and helps them get away by turning on some weapons. So I don't know why she was better at hitting those buttons than he would have been.
Yeah. She launches like a force field out of the back of the ship that stops Reese's ship. Is that what happens?
Yeah. But you do get a little more meet cute between them. You're like, yes, it's a will they, won't they kind of thing. You got to have that even in a kid show.
They're throbbing biological urges.
And just when they think they're out of it, a gigantic black hole appears, which allows for Splitsy to use the term "it sucks" on this kid show.
Yeah, very cute.
In other words, it sucks, which is describing what a black hole does.
Literally true.
And then we get to meet Nebula, Michael Dorn's character, which you can hear Michael Dorn in there, but it is digitally affected. Though also he's really a Gargamel type, like.
Yeah.
In later episodes, thanks to the ending of this episode, what happens to him, he gets cursed with a human body. So in most of his other appearances, he has like the hiccups or sneezing fits or all these things that like annoy him about being human instead of a floating mass of energy. But why don't we give Michael Dorn a little listen here?
I am Nebula. Give me the anti-force and die.
Isn't that supposed to be or die?
You'll never get the anti-force, Nebula. That's a promise.
There is no place to run. Once I have the anti-force, the universe is mine.
What is this anti-force?
I don't know.
Whoa. Let me get this straight in my puny little monkey mind. We're risking our lives fighting a metal monkey with a portable brain and a guy who wants to be a black hole defending something that we don't even know what it is? Hello? What's wrong with this picture?
One thing I noticed about this series is that it's fairly mature in that you hear the words kill and die.
Yeah, a lot.
Which is still fairly surprising for a 1996 kid series.
When you see Reese's one in the first episode too, like it's almost like a bloody pile. It's there is physical threat in this a lot more than you would. I think that's how this was a Y7 show. It was early in the ratings for that, but I think it got away with more stuff because it was on syndication. They didn't have one network telling them Batman can't break glass or whatever, so they could get away with a little more. And we both nodded at each other when he gave his most Kirk-like line there.
Yeah, he was getting very Kirky throughout that whole scene.
I don't know. Dom Irera, again, really pulling it off as the like, excuse me kind of character. Like, you're telling me, you say, what are you?
He is our lens into the world. The normal man. Everyday Joe lunch pail.
If kids are losing it, they need to have him explain it to them. Them explain things to Spydor, so then it's explained to us. I also did have a little chuckle at this, I won't say animation mistake, but so the commercial break goes to him threatening them on the ship. And I cut out 8 seconds of just music there. When they come back from the commercial break, they drop out of the ship and then go into the base where the time machine is. And they just kind of resume the scene. My thinking is that they did the act separately with two different borders, and one of them ended the scene inside the ship, but the next one had it outside the ship. So in retakes, they had to like add a little, they leave the ship and go have the conversation outside, because otherwise there's no reason for Nebula to move with them to keep talking to them.
I wasn't sure if it was just me. Maybe it's a continuity problem on the show, but like a lot of the time I'm like, wait, where are they in relation to each other? Where are they now? Like, what's happening? I just maybe it was too busy or just not communicated well, but at times I had that problem.
Yeah, it loses a little spatial awareness at times. And that was a big one for me, and I just had to chuckle at like they have to take the time. They can't just resume from the commercial break. Also, though, Nebula threatening them and then vanishing, it reminded me of All Singing, All Dancing on Simpsons.
Yes. Actually, yeah, I was confused. I thought I had missed something because he's like, give me the thing and die. And then there's a commercial break. I'm like, wait a minute. Why didn't he just kill them? Like, why did he go away?
He decided he didn't didn't want to kill them now, and he just left. So once, just like in All Singing, All Dancing with Snake pointing a gun at the Simpsons, once they're back from commercial break, he's like, oh, you know what? I don't want to point a gun at you.
Bye.
Bye. Then we get some more cute little moments with Gorilla being very nice. He's like comforting everybody. But death is imminent. And so Simian does the very, Kirk sacrificial thing of everyone else go, I'm going to save the glop. That's what they call it as they're investigating the time machine or
Each letter stands for something.
Yeah, but I just like calling it glop. That's a fun name for the MacGuffin, which is basically the football he's carrying around.
Like a cyber football.
Yeah. But I also love that it gets reprogrammed by Splitsy with a monkey wrench. Like he just puts a monkey wrench on this thing. He's like, oh yes, binary programming. Squeak, squeak, squeak. I turned on the time machine.
Unlike the other kinds of programming that don't use zeros and ones.
Yes, yeah. Which him saying one, Orbitron just mumbling 1, 2, that made him think of binary, which like, shouldn't that be 1, 0? For that blunder.
All they knew about was binary means numbers.
But poor Simian, all these characters just came straight from Earth, so they don't really miss it. Simian has been in space for like decades now. He really misses Earth. He wants to give his message to Houston. Also, he's dying to have a banana. The entire show, he's looking for bananas. He never gets to have one. It's sad. There's even one where he thinks they got a bunch of bananas, but they were just dream bananas and they vanish before he can take a bite. I had a banana for breakfast this morning, probably influenced by this.
So it's like the opening of Donkey Kong Country. All of his bananas are gone.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess King K. Rool is a little bit like Nebula.
Yeah. He's a man of royal stature.
They all get sent away safely to Earth except for Simian. He even has a Casablanca-style farewell, but someone leaves in the middle of his... Shaolin leaves in the middle of his speech, which makes it a funny little gag there. She's not staying for the entire reference to Casablanca.
I think even she knew, like, oh, this is tired.
Yeah, this is tired. This is so lame to do a Casablanca thing. And that's when he's left alone. He gets in his spaceship, and we basically meet back up with the beginning of the first episode of his space fight. And as he's telling the story to his armpit. And
he's sort of doing like a Bioshock-style audio log to leave before he dies.
Oh, yes. But yes. Here's the clip of him saying goodbye to everyone.
Now that I think of it, Earth wasn't such a great place. But it was better than this!
Everybody through, on the double!
Aren't you joining us, Captain?
Sorry, Goddess, I'd like to, but I've got a job to do.
But...
No, you're going through that wormhole. Because if you don't, you'll regret it. Maybe not now, but soon. And for the rest of your life. Doesn't take much to see that the problems of 5 little monkeys...
And she's gone.
Yeah.
And I do like in his, it's kind of tired to tell an origin story through voiceover like that. But in all the cutbacks to him, he's usually like dodging lasers as he's telling Houston, oh, and you better believe in part 1, there's a Houston, we have a problem, Joe.
Well, there has to be.
Of course.
It was 1995.
It was the law.
Or 96.
It was ape law.
There's got to be an ape law joke, too.
I bet there is.
Yeah, there has to be.
There's also a joke in one of the episodes where they go to a planet. There's an episode called Escape from the Planet of the Apes. But there's another one where they go to an ape planet that's actually Rhesus's home planet. And there they find a newspaper that says the Cubs win the World Series, which
finally.
Dom Irera says is the most ridiculous thing he's heard in all his time in outer space, which they wouldn't win that World Series for another 20 years, not until the universe-breaking reality year of 2016. Where
I'll take your word for it. I did not know that happened.
That was, I remember when it happened, just that. And it also had like one of the most exciting Game 7s in baseball history, that World Series. They really earned it. It was Cleveland versus the Cubbies. So 2 teams that hadn't won in almost a century. In the Cubs' case, more than a century. And then the Cubs won it. And I remember thinking that was the hefty price the world paid of like, well, you got to see Cubs win, but now that's the series finale of America.
Oh, man, we need rebooted.
The Cubs need to lose. They need to give up that World Series so we can get back to reality. But anyway, yes, the lasers are closing in on Simian. He's about to be destroyed, but he gets a almost like end of episode 4 of Star Wars style saving from the Captain Simian ship coming in out of nowhere.
Welcome Welcome aboard, Captain. You may notice a few changes.
Roger that, Shaolin.
I made a few adjustments to better suit our particular needs, Captain. And I help.
But how did you do all this in just a few minutes?
A few minutes? We've been bouncing around the monkey-loving space-time continuum for years.
Apparently, by leaving the warp open, you allowed two-way travel. We screwed up and got lost.
In time as well as space.
The good news is, we got to relive the 70s.
Sorry I missed it.
Well, excuse me.
Get a nice Steve Martin reference from the Orb.
Orbitron even put the arrow on his head when he said it too.
Yeah, we could not escape. Just the idea of the 70s was funny. Can you imagine a decade 20 years ago?
Yeah, that's something I really like on Friends of the Show, OKKO, when they wanted to reference what the KO's mom did as a kid. It was Korn and rap rock of the late 90s, because that is the 70s of now. When they were making fun of the 70s and the 90s, they actually were less than 20 years removed from the Brady Bunch and all those things. So, but yeah, it wouldn't be 90s cartoons if there wasn't 70s references to confuse children.
Yeah, and go back to our Pinky and the Brain episode, and of course, Gordon worked on that show. It is obsessed with the 70s.
Yes, yeah.
It is so obsessed with the 70s and pop culture from that era.
And it's a really clever writing thing to get the rest of the crew away from him in a time dilation thing to make it so they're like, oh, we're actually really good and know everything about this spaceship, even though we couldn't possibly have known that before.
It's kind of a cheat, but I love stuff like that in sci-fi. The whole like, oh, I was gone a minute for you, but it was actually 50 years.
Yeah, though I feel bad for them that they've lived like 4 or 5 years while he, are they having to retrain him about everything on the ship, you know?
I do like the monkeyed up ship, though.
It's such a cool, it makes it even better that they showed the unmonkeyed design that you really appreciate. Like, there's space for them to move their legs a ton, and they're more in like open cockpits. It's really cool.
It feels like a piece of concept art they use to sell the series. Like, it's a Star Trek bridge, but it's for monkeys.
Yeah, I think so too.
Let's say medium concept, not high concept.
Also, it was in the space fight here where it finally hit me that most of their laser sound effects have monkey screams behind them. It kind of gets annoying.
I found it very distracting and jarring at times. It's like whenever they fire a laser.
You'll hear it in the next clip, listeners, I think. Though it's also a very Animaniacs gag of having Splitsy quote the popular then commercial for Shake and Bake of, and I helped.
And that was a kind of a remake from the 60s commercial. So they were even doing nostalgia for the 60s and the 90s.
Those commercials did work on me. I got my mom to buy Shake and Bake so I could help and say I helped. And then after I did it once, I was kind of
You shook a bag of raw chicken in a bag of crumbs.
Yep, and then put that in the oven and ate it up. You know, man, I could go for that right about now. I'm doing more cooking now, and I've been cooking more, and I've been using like panko breadcrumbs, and hearing the shake and bake joke reminded me like, I'm just doing weeb shake and bake with these breadcrumbs. It's the same deal, but it's cooler in Japanese because they call it tonkatsu. It's not shake and bake.
Those are better breadcrumbs anyways.
Yeah, sometimes I think about like, what if I replace these with this Rice Krispies? Would I know?
Rice Krispie chicken. Just like Mom used to make.
It's coming to the Henry Gilbert kitchen soon. I like their use of monkey loving too. That's
it's a good way to cover up motherfucking.
I can just imagine Dom Irera saying motherfucking.
That was his first take.
And I did like how he says, we got to relive the 70s. And he then has his little costume he wore. And then I guess they experienced the 1970s.
His leisure suit that he pulls out. I like the very Shatner. Sorry, you missed it.
Yes, yeah. That's such a funny. They could have had him go like, oh, nice or whatever. But instead, a very like knowing Kirk like, sorry, I missed it.
It's kind of being judgmental of the 70s there.
Oh, too, thank goodness the uppity woman learned her place and learned how to listen to a man telling her what to do. Thank goodness. But, yes, we then get the plan from old Splitsy.
Bogey's at 10 o'clock.
It just keeps getting better and better. There's got to be some way to beat the bad guys.
I did retrieve one artifact from the 1970s that may in fact be the instrument of our deliverance, Captain. And it might come in right handy, too.
Oh, wow. This is beautiful. We're going to save the universe with A disco ball?
Do the hustle.
Okay, even a stupid plan is better than no plan. Brief me ASAP.
So, the dialectical relationship between matter and energy, utilizing Fermat's least time principle, indicates...
Cut the physics lessons, Doc. Will it work?
Learn if I know.
Yeah, the fact that a disco ball is the key item in all of this does feel like a very Warner Brothers-y of the 90s style touch.
That's pretty similar to Chia Earth, honestly.
Yeah,
as a plot point.
Like a 70s product being the linchpin in all of this.
Yeah, we said it before, but such a Kirk-like thing, like, in English, Doc. Like, cut the physics lessons, Doc.
He'd be screaming at Spock in another show.
Or Bones.
Yeah, or
one
Bones.
of those two. In that scene when Splitsy sproings, there's a nice, like, squash and stretch to him that you kind of have to pause.
Yeah, there's a nice bit of animation when he changes personalities.
They really do just rip off Do the Hustle there.
Yeah. But again, they're keeping the 70s stuff very broad in a way I think a WB show would just make a very inexplicable reference to a kid. Like, if you're a kid in the 90s, you know what a leisure suit is, you know what a disco ball is, you know what a disco sound is. So they're keeping it very, very broad.
And they cut back to the spaceships of the enemies they're chasing after the good guys. There's a little funny scene that did make me laugh where Nebula says, like, they're trying to crush my destiny. I don't like that. A very funny little exchange. And then, of course, we get one more. That's just what I had in mind.
Yes.
Which I'm like, we get it.
They also ran out of brain puns, as we said.
And in a very Voltron-style sequence here.
This was so cool. I liked all the different monkey ships that come off of the other monkey ship, and they all have their own different abilities.
Can you believe the Primate Avenger doesn't have its own toy, though?
That's crazy.
I think they couldn't sell Mattel on something at that price point, because it totally would have been like the $80 toy.
Yeah, like
the Castle Grayskull.
Or the USS Flag from G.I. Joe. Yeah.
Yeah, the one you'd have to be a really rich kid, or like it'd have to be your birthday and Christmas present if your mom was going to get you that.
It's all your Hanukkah gifts.
And in Voltron style, they did reuse this animation in other episodes.
It's cool. It's really cool.
Prepare to peel off. Report go. No go. Primate 1, go.
Primate 2, go.
Primate 3, go.
Primate 4, go.
Primate 5, go.
And 6, go. Peel off.
Yeah, and they peel off because they're monkeys.
I mean, that's so toyetic too. Of like, you will separate them. You get to put, if you buy it, you can put them all in their own ships. Like, it totally makes sense as a toy. The only toys they made though of vehicles were the single spaceship of his that gets blown up in the opening to this episode, and Rhesus's ship, because you need a villain ship to go with the good guy ship.
Maybe if they had another year of the show, they would have branched off into more toys.
If there had been a Wave 2, I think it would have definitely been at the front of Wave 2. Maybe they were even thinking like, if Wave 1 sells enough, we'll include that in Wave 2. But yeah, I love them being like pulled in different directions into their cockpits. I didn't realize until that point that Spider doesn't have thumbs, because spider monkeys don't have thumbs.
That's right. Yeah. He looks at his hands and sort of furrows his brow.
Yeah, I love that. He's like, oh, I can't do a thumbs up. Everybody else is. I had to Google that. I didn't realize spider monkeys didn't have thumbs either.
I like how, again, all of their ships do different things. So Shaolin's ship basically has a giant robo-arm and it just spins the other ship around. They don't show, it's the one character where they don't show an insert of him in the cockpit, but it's a gorilla ship that sort of just eats the other ships, right?
Yeah. He's driving the truck, which fits too with him because he's the least violent normally. So he would be the one who doesn't have guns. While meanwhile, Splitsy's ship shoots in two different directions because it's when they're being pulled in other directions.
And I think Spider ship just fires backwards.
Yes, yeah. Though it was like less violent than G.I. Joe, but they did have the G.I. Joe kind of like leave a body outside of the ship, which they're in outer space. I mean, and also they're robots. Just blow them up. Who cares? They set up these robots, but apparently they still had to follow the G.I. Joe parachute rules. And yes, peel off like you would peel a banana. Get it? Get it? So they have this cool shootout, which for the budget they have, it's fine. It's good. I mean, obviously it's not like a Macross fight or anything, but they don't have the money for that. I'm fine with that. And one thing that kind of gets like lost in the shuffle is that Simian's original plan was to destroy the thing in the sun, so that's how he tricks them later with this, by them flying towards the sun. But they you kind of lose track of that a little bit. But in their shootout, Rhesus thinks that he's got Simian. One more mind pun, but the comedic timing's off a little bit. He's like, well, I changed my mind, as he puts different minds in his head. They get the ship. Seemingly Captain Simian has blown it. They lose the disco ball. It didn't go into the sun as was their plan.
It comes out of the ship's nose.
Yes, yeah.
And is intercepted by Rhesus.
Bitten off. Like Rhesus is like, I was just biding my time. And he reveals his ship can go way faster than they thought. Grabs the glob and flies away. And Simian has a good exchange of like, well, what do you expect? I'm just a stupid animal or just stupid fetopod.
We did say that the glob is inside of a disco ball.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was part of their plan.
Yeah.
We saw them put it inside the disco ball, but we don't know their full plan until it is hatched on Nebula himself once Rhesus gives it to him, which they really should just take it outside the disco ball. They should know it's not a disco ball, but they don't understand these human things.
No.
Now, Nebula, you will be a god.
No, I will be the god. It is absorbing my power. No, I am becoming human.
So yes, he's half black hole now, half human.
Yeah, it's a very trippy transformation sequence. It also has just a lot of strobe effects.
Yeah. It is. It might kill you, but it's very well done. And apparently, as Dr. Splits explains later, the multiplanes of the disco ball cause a space-time embolism. So just the many mirrors on that thing cause the absorption of the glop to backfire.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. Let's accept
if you
that.
absorb a disco ball, it turns you human if you're a black hole? Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, that's how he gets all Gargamel or Skeletor. Like, he's scary in this, and he gets goofier as the show goes. Though that also puts him in his floating shape. You can't really make a toy out of that. But when he's a white head on top of a, pitch black starry body with a cape, that's a toy. And so that's what he is for the rest of the series. And what's really funny is that, so I watched the last episode. They defeat Nebula again in basically the same way. They're like, they make another glop. They give him the glop. He's like, finally, I'm a god again. And he turns it on, and he gets then turned into just a crystal ball with a head floating. And he's like, I got tricked again.
Was that going to be for the new episodes, what his appearance would be then?
Yes. Well, then it becomes a role reversal. Well, now Rhesus has the power, and Nebula is his sidekick.
Okay.
So he would have been the main villain of season 2 had that ever come to pass. Which was also what happened in the last episode of Sonic AM, where Robotnik got destroyed, and his Snively,
yeah.
He took over.
He took over, yeah.
But anyway, so yes, they're defeated. There's a giant explosion, which somehow doesn't kill Rhesus or Nebula. They'll appear later. I guess they got teleported somewhere else. But as they fly away, we get a very Star Trek-style explanation of the pseudoscience that saved the day.
Congratulate yourself, Splitsy. The plan worked like a charm.
Indeed. As I calculated, when Nebula absorbed the graviluminous overfolding positrons, the multiplanes of the disco ball caused a space-time embolism. And it blowed up real good.
Of course, with no glop left, all wormholes to Earth are gone. But we'll go home again. Someday. Until then, we are the crew of this ship, which I've named the Primate Avenger.
I have a name, too. I am Gorilla.
Excellent.
That sounds real pretty, yeah.
Herbie is EQ.
I've been wondering about something. Why did you all come back for me?
You are our captain.
You know, we are not above feelings of loyalty and selflessness.
And another thing, when you went back to Earth, did you bring back any bananas?
Yeah, but we ate them all.
Shake the booty to the oogie woogie down and back up again. Funk!
They pass by a giant disco ball.
Yes.
This really reminds me of a classic like Star Trek The Next Generation style ending where they're all on the bridge reflecting and there's like a lighthearted joke at the end. It's like, well, Wolf, you know what they say, blah, 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 bum, ba, ba, bum, ba, ba, ba. And then it's off to the credits.
Now, Data, I knew you had that plan, but how did you know it would work? No, but the stuff with Gorilla, I did laugh at that, of just how accepting they're like, oh, yeah, that's nice. Yeah,
like, yay.
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
Thanks for contributing.
That ending also reminded me of that great gag on Futurama in the Star Trek episode where they said, like, it's like filling a balloon up with too much air.
That's right.
That's how they always work.
And I noticed, so I went through a bunch of the credits of the episodes. Every episode has a crazy credit where they take an existing quote from history and put the word monkey in it or make it about monkey. So this one is No Monkey is an Island by John Donne. Really, no man is an island. But there's one of those in every episode.
Okay. That's
in every credit sequence.
Tiny Toons did at least one of those.
Animaniacs.
So,
and Freakazoid. And Pinky and the Brain. Pinky and the Brain would teach you a new word in every episode at the end.
Yeah, I forgot that one. Yeah, so again, just taking, refining the techniques they did before, like you got to keep things light. You know, this is an action show about space monkeys, so you got to keep it a little light. The name of the ship, though, Primate Avenger, that is so very much like what the toy company told them to tell it. It just doesn't feel natural for the tone of the show.
I was wondering, like, oh, is that a joke? I don't understand.
I mean, I wonder if in an episode they must have done a Prime Directive joke of calling it the Primate Directive.
Oh, they
right?
had, yes.
That had to happen.
Episode 3.
Though the ending of this episode is very Voyager of just like someday we'll get home, like the statement of purpose, and also letting you know that like Captain Simian would really like a banana, but no one will give him one. He will always be denied his banana. That is his lot in life, as a C-3PO would say. But that was a fun action show. When the action came, it was not super comedic. It was action, and there was time for jokes, but when it was time for science fiction adventure, they still had space for that too.
Yeah, I was watching a lot of cartoons at this time, and I definitely would have watched all of this if it was more available to me. I like the 90s style irreverent humor that is really just like about making fun of the 70s and 60s and all the sci-fi tropes that were leading up to that point. And I do enjoy the Star Trek in certain ways. So yeah, this is a very fun series. I would watch more of it today if it was more available in a format that wasn't excruciating to my eyes and ears. Again, we apologize for these clips.
Yeah, sorry.
This is the best possible version of Captain Simian that exists for mankind right now.
Yes. I still think it's fun enough to suffer through at least for a few episodes.
I could say it could be worse. I'm just spoiled because
the video transfer
and the sound too. The quality of what's online could be worse because I've been spoiled recently. All the shows I've produced for What a Cartoon recently, I've just been looking at Blu-ray rips of things.
Right.
So it's just like glorious 1080p. Every frame is immaculate, and this is like a 260i rip of a VHS tape from 1997
with a constant like tracking sounds like.
Yeah.
Under it, yeah. But, until 41E decides they want to re-release this with Hallmark support, I think that's all that we're going to get.
Put it on Crackle. No one will find it. So thanks again to listening to another episode of What a Cartoon, and thanks again to Devin for donating enough to get this premium episode that they chose the topic of. And we really like doing it, and it was fun to revisit the series that I've only seen a few episodes of. Yeah,
thanks so much for your support, and there's so many ways, even if you can't support at Devin's level, there are certainly great reasons to support us at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
That's right. If you go there and sign up at the $5 level, you have access to dozens and dozens of bonus podcasts, including all of our limited miniseries, the most recent of which was Talking of the Hill, our 13-episode exploration of the first season of King of the Hill. On top of that, there is frankly too many podcasts to mention because we are entering our 3rd year of the Patreon very soon. So once you sign up, you'll get access to everything we've done for the Patreon behind a paywall from the very, very beginning. And we also have a newer $10 tier. You'll get all the $5 stuff with that, but we have a special monthly premium podcast that's often 3 hours long, approaching 4 hours long now. Henry, what is that?
That is our What a Cartoon Movie podcast, where we talk about a different animated feature film once a month and only for our $10 on Patreons. If you sign up, you'll get access to all the previous ones and the newest ones that go live once a month. In May, we did Aladdin. This month, if you really liked all this talk about the Spielberg era Tiny Toons stuff, we are doing Tiny Toons, How I Spent My Vacation, the immaculately animated OVA of
It really is.
A Tiny Toons series. It's basically the 4 best episodes or best animated episodes of Tiny Toons anyway, all strung together as one film. And I can't wait to do it and talk a ton about those tiny and toony and just a little loony cartoon characters, and it'll be invading your podcast only if you're a $10 and up patron at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
So yes, thanks again for listening. I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. Please find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. My other podcast is Retronauts. That is a classic gaming podcast every Monday and occasionally on Friday. Go to retronauts.com or look for Retronauts in your podcast machine. It'll be available. I recommend you listen to it and subscribe. Henry, how about you?
You can follow me on Twitter at HENEREYG. You'll get all the updates from your good pal Henry Gilbert on there. Plus, whenever new content goes live on the free feeds and on Patreon for these podcasts, you'll hear about them from me as soon as it happens. So you want to stay informed, follow me on Twitter at HENEREYG.
Thank you so much for listening, folks. We'll see you next week for the Ren and Stimpy Show episode Hermit Ren, and we will see you then.
Well, that's the ballgame, Houston. 2 outs, bottom of the 9th, and Monkey Casey has struck out. Houston, if you have a copy of this message, just know that this was one chimp who saw his duty and tried to do it. Captain Simian, signing off.
Whether you're looking to build a website for your business, your hobby, your podcast, or just for fun, Pear Networks is your go-to web hosting partner. Not only do we have the lowest domain price in the industry, starting at just $11, we've got hundreds of stunning website templates to help you stand out from the crowd. You're not a techie? Not a problem. With our easy DIY site builders, you can launch your impressive website without any technical know-how. And when it comes to security and updates, don't worry, we've got you covered. Our 24/7 US-based customer support is the best in the industry. Check out Pear.com today to learn more. PAIR.com.